Henny. So wonderful to be with you this morning. And I think we've got an exciting law to discuss where Stephen is talking about, and he says, avoid wallpaper at all costs. And really, the introduction to the chapter is that this law will teach you the science of grabbing people's attention in everything you write, speak, and produce. It's the underlying secret of all the world's most famous storytellers, marketers, and creators. And I think there's some wonderful challenges there and some wonderful lessons we can learn from it. As I thought about it, I thought instead of starting the conversation the way we normally start, where we say, morning, Henny, how are you? And it's that sort of thing. And I'm saying that, morning, Henny, how are you? Is so often just the wallpaper that we use, and we're not grabbing people's attentions. What are your thoughts, Henny?
I agree. What is very interesting for me is when I read the chapter, it talks about and it brings in a concept called habituation, which just once again amazes me how clever the brain are. So a lot of the things that we start doing over and over again becomes, let's call it, less significant to the brain, and it's on autopilot that you do those things, which is good news if it's good habits, but it's also bad news if it's bad habits. You're going to just keep on doing it. But you sort of touched on it for me. I think communication plays a big role in that. And it's funny that you started with how are you? You normally greet me on a Friday with a WhatsApp, with a good morning, and then I know we're almost ready to start our session. This morning's was very interesting. I got a good morning with Peter standing in his RAC running gear, ready for a race. So when I greeted you this morning, it was, morning, Peter, what race were you doing? Which was very different to the how are you? You had to almost get the brain to think about it. It's not the no, I'm fine, thank you kind of scenario. You had to look and we started the conversation differently. And I think this race was in the Val Triangle, maybe Van der Bijl, etc., etc. And I think that's what we need to do more often in terms of where we are. We need to be more interested. We go through, let's call it the motions of saying, how are you? And we expect no fine, thanks, and you. We almost kind of expect that thing. And maybe we need to challenge ourselves a little bit more by just getting the brain to be a bit more significant again, by just asking a different person and just almost surprising the other person by something as simple as a greeting.
And I think that's what the chapter's about. It's about being different, standing out, being different. We talk about intentional living, and I think that if we want to be intentional, we can't just be Mr. Average. We need to stand out and be different from the others, so that our lives are an example to others. And that's what our challenge with this podcast is. And that's what I would like to see happening. He ends the chapter saying, make people feel something either way. So that's our challenge. Would you like to add anything to that, Henny?
I think so. I mean, I really just touched on the one side in saying what you ask people, but I think there's another side to communication as well called listening. And you're so true. If somebody were to ask you just a simple question to say, how are you? Would you be responding in the fine, thank you? Maybe there is something in it that you could do as well to say, answer that question very different, to say, I had an awesome week, or thank you for asking, but you were doing that, etc. So I think it aligns with what you're saying at the end. So almost if somebody is in autopilot mode, trigger their not autopilot mode by asking them questions differently. So it's not the normal response that I usually get. What am I supposed to do right now? Maybe there's a conversation starting. So yeah, I would like to add to that to say, I agree with Stephen there to say, let's just be different. Let's call it sincere and get out of habituation. Let's just get the brains to think about it again.
Yeah, I think so often when people respond to that question, we automatically assume that they're going to say, fine, thank you. And it's amazing. And I've tried it occasionally over the years where somebody has said, how are you? And I've come up with a ridiculous answer. And they haven't even listened to the answer. They've just carried on as if I'd answered, fine, thank you. So I think it is also a challenge. How are you listening to people? And that's a big challenge for our viewers out there. But I'd really like to just close off by saying, are you making a difference in the lives of other people?